It's now 7:30, and I would like to call to order the Old Bridge Planning Board meeting for today, October 27th, 2022. And if we could rise and please salute the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Planning Board has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of the meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, date, location, and agenda of this meeting, mailing such announcement to the Home News Tribune, and filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk. Then we'll do roll call. Mr. Lenning? Mr. Mamakis?
Here.
Mr. De Palma?
Here.
Mr. Lauer?
Here.
Mr. Renna?
Here.
Mr. Petty?
Here.
Ms. Masella is absent. Mr. McIsaac?
Here.
Mr. Brennan? Ms. Cannon is absent, and Chairman Marucci.
Here. Okay, can everybody hear me? Doesn't sound like, okay. Before we get started on today's agenda, Joe has an announcement to make regarding application 48-2022P Morris Habitat for Humanity, Inc.
Good evening, everyone. If anyone is here on that application, any member of the public, the application, as the chairman said, number 48-2022P for Morris Habitat for Humanity, Inc., is being adjourned. It is being rescheduled for the December 8th, 2022 regular board meeting, and no further public notice will be provided for this application. So if you are here for that application, you're hereby being notified that it is being adjourned to the December 8th board meeting with no further public notice being provided for that application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sordillo. Okay, and first item on the agenda is the minutes from September 22nd, 2022. And we have to put that to vote, so could I get a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
By Mr. Lauer, and a second by Mr. De Palma.
Mr. Lenning?
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Mr. Renna?
Yes.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. McIsaac?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman Marucci.
Yes. Okay, next item up are two discussions. The first is an amendment to Land Development Ordinance, Section 250-6, definitions, and 250-53, fences and walls. And the second is amendment to Land Development Ordinance, Section 250-83, site plan approval required.
Good evening, board members. As you may all recall, in the past couple of years, I have been reviewing our land development ordinance and cleaning it up because it is quite outdated. And I have been working to see how it is easier to residents as well as our business owners. What came across the planning and the zoning office's purview was that some of these fences, the ordinance says that any fence in the non-residential zone has to be open. But then in the non-residential zone is where we have outdoor storage, parking areas. If the fence is open, it defeats the whole purpose of having a fence because you really can't screen those parking areas. So now we went ahead and we amended the ordinance such that we allow a 10-foot high fence, but we also allow that if the applicant wishes, they could have a solid fence up to 6 feet, and beyond that, it could be an open fence. However, if we do not any longer require them to have an open fence, because otherwise, the zoning officer denies the permit, and they have to be heard by the zoning board, and the zoning board has been extremely busy, so we are trying to save costs on the homeowners as well as the business owners side, as well as easing up the pressure on the zoning board. With the residential too, we are making certain changes that will avoid these homeowners to go in front of the zoning board. The second ordinance actually is related to site plan, and what we noticed is our fee schedule has a item called waiver of site plan, but there is no language in the ordinance when do you seek a waiver for site plan. And in many instances, me as the administrative officer has administratively approved stuff, but how do you define, when do you need a site plan waiver? So what we did is we added language in to say that as long as it does not affect the stormwater, the drainage, it does not trigger a use or a bulk variance, in certain instances like fences and retaining walls and stuff like that, I could administratively approve it, and there will be no need for the business owner or a resident to go and seek for an approval in front of the zoning board. So these are the two changes. It is very consistent with what we have been doing in the past 2 years. We are really helping businesses avoid going to zoning boards if it's not necessary. We have been helping residents to make it easier on them because this is an added cost. When somebody is putting a fence, it at least costs them $1,000 just to get the approval. So we're trying to save those costs.
Just for the record, can you define the difference between an open fence and a solid fence?
So when you can see through and you have a chain link fence, it's an open fence. And when it's a solid wall or you have what's the word? When you can see through, when it truly screens your outdoor area or a parking area, it's a solid fence. And our ordinance actually defines it.
Okay, very good. And do we have any questions from anybody on the board?
Yes, so for the businesses, how does that apply to any of the businesses per se? Who wants to put a fence up? Do they have to put a fence completely around the property? Can they put a half fence up to shield their particular area? Because we did do out that seating ordinance. How does that come into play? Or does it not come into play?
I missed the last part.
So if we have a seating ordinance where they could put a couple of tables outside,
Right.
right? 2 tables or 4 tables, and they want to put a fence to screen it.
Correct.
How does that come into play with
I
that?
have to go back and look at the ordinance. It depends on the location of the fence.
Plus, no, I told
Because one, if you're along the front yard or if it's a sidewalk dining, you wouldn't want a fence. You want to see people dine outside, right? But when, in some instances, you are in a parking area where you want to avoid cars from ramming into these tables, or you want to add added protection, you would be allowed. So it depends on the location, and we would have to review it to see that it does not, one, it should not trigger safety concerns, and it should not trigger a C variance. But that is what the Planning and the Zoning Office will review before we issue it. So although I'm the administrative officer, we work very closely with the zoning office, and they review it as well.
And the opposite side would be for safety per se, as you mentioned. Okay, just want to know. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from anybody on the board, or Vina? Mr. Lauer?
Vina, how does this affect the easements?
I am working on it. I knew that question would come up. I did present it to the council too, where easements are a little more complicated. So it's work in progress. Probably you will see me again in December with the easement ordinance, but we are working on it.
Okay, my second question is ingress and egress onto adjacent private property, is that allowed? In other words, if a person has a house and they have their yard fenced in, and behind them is private property, or do you allow a gateway to be put up?
I mean, I have to see the particular scenario, but I believe there has to be some sort of easement or something for them to go onto a neighbor's property.
Oh, yeah. No, they would be on their own property, but it would allow them to walk through to the other property. in some cases, to discard debris.
I don't believe you can do that. It's a violation.
Yeah, that, unless there's agreement between the two property owners, you wouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yep.
Whether with this ordinance or without.
I understand that, but if they weren't allowed to put the gate up to begin with, they'd have to throw their stuff over the fence, is what I'm getting to.
Well, they shouldn't be throwing stuff over the fence onto neighboring property.
I
unless they-
realize that.
If it's their own property and they're only fencing a portion of it, that's a different story. Then you would, have a
Right,
gate in the back
right.
and you'd be able to access the remainder of your property. But if the question is accessing another neighboring property owner, the answer is just simple, you're not allowed to do that, and this ordinance wouldn't permit it unless there's some type of agreement between the two property owners.
Mr. Lauer,
Yeah.
and if you have a specific property or specific issue, I'll be happy to work
Okay.
with you and the zoning office.
Fine. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we're going to put this to a vote on the two separate issues individually. So the first one is the amendment to Land Development Ordinance, Section 250-6, definitions, and 250-53, fences and walls. So can I get a motion on that?
I'll move it.
I'll
By
second.
Mr. Lenning, and a second?
Second.
Who was second?
Yes, by Mr. De Palma.
And this one is for 250-53 fences and walls, correct? Doing that one first?
Definitions and fences and walls, correct.
Mr. Lenning?
Yes.
Mr. Mackis?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Mr. Renner?
Yes.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. McIsaac?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
And Chairman Marucci.
Yes. Okay, and the second is amendment to Land Development Ordinance, Section 250-83, site plan approval required. So can I get a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lauer.
Mr. Lenning?
Yes.
Mr. Mackis?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Mr. Renner?
Yes.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. McIsaac?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
And Chairman Marucci.
Yes.
I just, the chairman had noticed that some new individuals had walked into the meeting, and we just want to make sure that if anyone's here for the Morris Habitat for Humanity application, that you're aware that that has been adjourned, and it's going to be held on December 8th, 2022, the normal board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Sordillo. Okay, moving on, we go to number 5 on the agenda, which is a resolution 40-2022P, AC Power 16 LLC, major preliminary and final site plan. I need a motion on that
I'll move it.
I'll second.
by Mr. Mamakis and Mr. Lenning.
Mr. Lenning?
Yes.
Mr. Mackis?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Mr. Renner?
Yes.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. McIsaac?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Chairman Marucci.
Yes. Okay, sixth on the agenda is a completeness waiver, and that is application 47-2022P, New Private Restaurant Properties LLC, for major preliminary and final site plan with C variances. Do we have anyone here representing?
So I did issue a memo to the board recommending granting of those waivers. So Mr. Shimanovitz is not in attendance tonight, but I just wanted to remind the board, and for new members, this is the Outback that is located at the intersection of Bryan and Route 34. In 2019, the planning board approved an addition to, or the reconstruction of the restaurant and an addition of a retail space. But they received preliminary approval because they had to go through NJDOT. There was a parcel involved which they were required to purchase from NJDOT. Apparently, that didn't happen. So now, since it's more than 2 years old, they filed a new application to shrink the size of the building. And I believe they will be eliminating the retail store because otherwise they've lost parking spaces. So they would have to just shrink the project by a couple of 100 square feet and also partake with the retail use. So that's the application. They had submitted these items before, which were reviewed in detail by board professionals, and so I recommend that the board approve these waivers.
Do we have any idea when it's coming back in front of the board?
They have filed an application. As soon as they are deemed complete, they will be given a date. We are still reviewing it for completeness, and I think the waivers help.
Okay, any questions from anybody on the board?
Yes.
Steve?
So I recall them when they came in front of us, they wanted to actually build the new building in front of the old building at that time. They wanted to get the access to that little shoulder when they come out that entrance on the side, and we told them they had to get that approval from the DOT, which they didn't. So now what I'm understanding is they're going to shrink the building down. They don't have that approval, they're still gonna try, or that's completely gone.
That has
To get out.
right.
Because I remember at that point in time, the board's concern was trucks making a turn from Perrine onto 9 and somebody trying to get out and the shoulder then squeezes down under the tunnel. So, and now that retail building in the back they wanted is gone, correct? Okay. So from your perspective, they're able to build a building in the front and still have enough parking? That was one of the concerns.
I haven't started my planning review yet. This is just for the checklist. So I will have a memo on it once I come to that point.
Mr.
wanna
Chair, if I could,
refresh-
just to be clear, this is only for the 3 waivers being requested. They will have to, submit the full application. We're going to have a full hearing.
We do have some new members here, so to get a little bit of sense of what was going on.
And actually, the review, when we have the review letter, we will fill in the new board members with the past. Because usually when there is a prior approval, I include a history section or a background section to bring the board up to speed. So definitely you will see that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from anybody on the board? No? Okay. Okay, can I get a motion on that?
I'll move it.
Okay, by Mr. Brennan.
I'll second it.
I have to get the new names down. And a second? By Mr. Mamakis. I know your name.
Mr. Lenny?
Yes.
Mr. Makis?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Mr. Renner?
Yes.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. McIsaac?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Chair Marucci?
Yes. Okay, and our first and only application on the agenda tonight is application number 12-20, 22P Alfieri Oldbridge Associates LLC for major preliminary subdivision and major preliminary site plan with C variances. Good evening. You hold it for a couple seconds. There you go. Green means go.
Again, my name is Frank Petrino. We're the law firm of Eckert Siemens. We represent the applicant Alfieri Oldbridge LLC. We did provide notice by service to adjoining property owners, I think in 2 towns. I don't, if I'm remembering correctly. and we published notice in the required local paper on October 17. We did submit an affidavit of proof of service and publication, and I believe the board has jurisdiction, but I'll leave that to your attorney.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed the affidavit and other public notices. It was all appropriate and meeting the requirements of law, so the board has jurisdiction over this application.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
So just briefly, let me give you a little background on the application, what we're here seeking tonight. The property we're talking about is located in the MUIH zoning district. It is a designated inclusionary development in the township's court-approved housing element and fair share plan, has frontage on both Lawrence Harbor, Manawan Road, and Biondi Avenue, and is designated on the tax maps of the township as Block 2150, lots 411 and 613. We couldn't find street addresses for those two, but those are the lot and block numbers. So the applicant is here tonight seeking preliminary major subdivision approval, not preliminary and final, just preliminary major subdivision approval to create 3 lots. Lot A would be approximately 65 acres. Proposed Lot B would be approximately 25¼ acres, and proposed Lot C is approximately 4.41 acres. All the other 2 lots are conforming lots. The third lot, Lot C, is a non-conforming lot and requires variances for lot area and lot coverage. Also requesting tonight preliminary site plan approval for Phase 1. Phase 1 of the overall development is lots A and B. We're proposing to construct on Lot A a 529 unit inclusionary development, be 423 market rate units and 106 low and moderate income units, together with other site improvements, including landscaping, active and passive recreational amenities, lighting, obviously internal roadways, utilities have to be extended. I believe there's a sanitary sewer pump station that we're either going to tie into or build a new one, or both of those things, and our engineer will deal with that. We'll have a total of 1,079 parking spaces. 1,001 of those are surface spaces, of which 27 are ADA approved spaces. We also have 78 garage or driveway spaces. Depends on the type of unit, and our architecture, our architect can show you the different types of units and which ones will have garage or driveway spaces. The other aspect of Phase 1 is Lot C. We have agreed with our adjoining neighbor, the Bridgepoint Condominium Association, to build for them and convey to them on Lot C a parking lot. It'll be built in 2 steps or phases. I think the first phase is 30 spaces to see if that's adequate for the needs of the association. The association had said that they were they're underparked on their site. People park on roadways, people park on the entrance road, so this is something that would alleviate that problem. We also are asking for a variance from the MUIH zoning district phasing or linkage schedule to permit development of all the residential dwelling units on Lot A in advance of any development on Lot B, which it's shown on the plans that were submitted for informational purposes. What is shown is a flex office building of 60,000 square feet. We were supposed to, under the settlement agreement, if feasible, build that shell only before we built the second half of our inclusionary development. So the first half was, and I'll use rough numbers, approximately 250 units, and then you build the next phase after the shell is built, which is phase 2 of the development on Lot B. And then there's additional phase would be on Lot B would be the development of a 157,000 square foot office building and a parking garage. So those are, that is the phasing variance that, or linkage variance that we're requesting. We also requested a waiver to defer review and approval of our final landscape plans for development on lots A and C. A, again, is the residential, C is the parking lot, until final site plan approval. We're not asking to eliminate the requirement, but just deferring it to phase 1 as we get further along in the development process. We have the usual catch-all in the notice for other variances, deviations, interpretations, but I don't think there are any others, and I don't believe any have been mentioned in the staff report. We have 4 witnesses tonight, our architect, our planner, our traffic consultant, and our engineer. But before we get to that, and before I go generally through what their testimony is going to be about, the attorneys have an issue. Mr. Sardillo wants to deal with that head on now as opposed to later in the hearing process. So we are asking for a waiver until final site plan approval of the final landscaping plan. We have been through the mill at DEP for, 18 months or more to get we have, unlike projects that come to you where you give approvals subject to other governmental approvals, we've gotten all our DEP approvals. We've gotten our CAFR approval and wetlands, any number of approvals. It took us, again, 18 months. I think we've got finally got the CAFRA and related DEP approvals on February 25, 2022. We originally were into them in 2020, I believe. So it took a little while. We also had to get from DEP, you'll see when we go through it, that, and you're more familiar with it than I am, our property is bisected by something called Whale Creek. And so most of the development is above, and I'll call it north, but somebody behind me will yell and say that's east or west, but I'll call that north. And then below the stream are 2 buildings, 100% affordable units. I think a total of 52 below the stream. So we have those. We've had our LOI. We had to go through and redo our LOI. That was approved I think that was approved earlier in 2020. So we have spent years and a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of money to get through many development hurdles and hoops. Once we were near getting the DEP approvals in January of this year, we filed with the township and the county. Now, the county application, I know you're familiar because you hear about the county approvals all the time. Theoretically, they're supposed to approve in 30 days. We have consented to the extension of the county acting because, and you'll hear more about this, or members that were here previously might remember, we are going to make approximately $3 million worth of road improvements to Matawan Road, sometimes known as no, I forgot, Lawrence Harbor Road. And so we're trying to coordinate, and Vina knows about this, we're trying to coordinate with the county, the township, and the Turnpike Authority, who control the parkway. We're trying to coordinate with them the review of the various improvements. Now, the improvements that we're talking about were all set forth in the settlement agreement that the town signed with Fair Share Housing, Alfieri, and I don't know, 5 or 6 other affordable developers. So we're pursuing those approvals. We thought that we would have something to tell you about before this meeting, because we had tried to set up a meeting and had a date. We had everybody agreeing to a date of September 15th, and then on September 14th, the Turnpike Authority canceled the meeting. So we don't have anything to tell you tonight, but shortly, I think sometime next week, the county is pushing this, and they're trying to set up a meeting either on the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd with all the parties. I think the Turnpike Authority is going to be part of that, to look at the issues. There are 1 or 2 design issues, and there's an issue regarding maintenance, who's going to pay for the electricity. We're putting in 2 different traffic signals. So then the issues are, well, who's going to pay for the electricity to run the signal? So we have those issues to resolve. So we have, since well before the midpoint review, and I did submit to Township Attorney, Mr. Roselli, at the midpoint review in July of 2020, I gave him an update on what we were doing, and that, as soon as we had our DEP and other governmental approvals, we would be into the board, and that we would continue to work on our plans, both site plans and architectural plans for the development. Now, we're only here for the residential, but we have designed, although it's not Mr. Mino's design, it was another engineer, we have designs for the non-residential buildings. We've already put a lot of time and energy into that, and they are available, but not part of this application. What I wanted to show you, and I don't, if you have the second, the overall concept, site plan. I think it's the first sheet. Second? Well, I mean, after the title sheet. So this is, you've seen this plan, but only seen black and white versions. This is a plan, and it shows the white buildings to the left by the Parkway. That's Lot B.
Mr. Petrino, just before we go on, just for record-keeping purposes, are we going to mark this as an exhibit?
Yeah, well, that'll be part of the Well, let's mark that as
Yeah, I mean, since we're
A1.
referring it now, I
Yeah.
think we should mark it as Exhibit A1.
Right.
That
And
is it looks like it's titled Concept Site Plan dated October 27th, 2022. Is that correct?
Right, prepared by Minnow and Wasco, our architects, and they also do other planning and design work. And what's good about this plan is you can also see the Matawan Road. So you can see, hard to tell, but you can see that if you look closely, the signal at the main entrance to the development, and then to the south where the park and ride is. I'm sure you know better than I where the park and ride is, to the, I'll call it the south or the left on this plan. There's another signal going in, and obviously widening and other things going along the frontage of Matawan Road, both, again, I'll call it north and south. And this plan is not a final landscape plan. It is a plan that is allowing you to see some of the major components of the project. You'll hear more about it. There are 3 neighborhood parks on the north side. There's a large square. I see, if you see the rectangle close to the white buildings, that's 2 or 3 acres of a proposed park. Below the stream, there is a separate neighborhood park for those 2 buildings, and you'll hear more about those buildings and the purpose for that park. You'll then see above the detention basin, you see recreational amenities. You see a clubhouse. My eyes were better. You see a swimming pool, clubhouse, some tennis courts where they could be pickleball courts. Now, everything below and to the right, below and to the right on that plan that you see as wooded, it's not part of this application, but Alfieri does own it. It's called Lot 5.12, and it abuts the railroad tracks. And that is being used to satisfy a CAFRA obligation with regard to, and I'll just be general about this because I don't have the specifics, but to handle a reforestation requirement. The site itself now is, a lot of it is environmentally constrained, wetlands and other, flood hazard area and other constraints, and a lot of it is currently forested, and it will remain that way, and can't be developed now or in the future. It'll be deed restricted. But it's not part of our application, but it is part of our CAFRA approval, so I wanted to tell you about it. So we would like the ability to defer completion of our landscape plan till final approval. Again, this is only preliminary approval. But we wanted to show you all the green areas and all the fundamental or basic landscaping that will occur. This is not by any means the final landscape plan, but it is a progress plan. And at or before final, it'll be submitted to the township for review. Now, we did get a memo, and I'm going to get it wrong, from Conservation. We did get a memo from Mr. Lavallo, who is the Conservation Officer and has something to do with the, my secretary wrote, Trade Tree Commission, but I think it's this, not Shade Tree, yes. So anyway, so we have that. There are a couple of things in there. The only thing I would point out in there is that he does ask a question about 512, but 512 isn't part of the application. So we'd ask, and your attorney wanted to raise this at the beginning of the meeting to make sure that we had a decision on this before we went further.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Petrino. Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to give a little background, because we do have some new members here that might not have been involved. Back in the March Planning Board meeting, this waiver hearing was held as to the waivers being requested with regard to these landscape items, specifically item 40A, 40B, 40C, 40D, and 52 of the checklist. At that time, the board did agree to grant the waivers, but they granted them temporarily. And the condition was that they wanted to see, the board at that time wanted to see these submissions made before the public hearing was made on the preliminary application, which is what we're here for now. What the applicant is now requesting is a modification of that waiver request, whereby the board will allow them to proceed and still deem them complete with regard to these items, with regard to the landscape plan, All these items that I just listed relate to the landscaping for the site, and allow them to proceed. And they're going to be offering up testimony with regard to what has been identified as Exhibit A1, and provide testimony as to some of the landscaping aspects of the development. However, the final landscape plan, which would address the items being waived or requested to be waived, would be submitted at a later time, but at any event prior to receipt or filing for the final application. So that is what's being requested. So it was after discussion with the applicant's attorney and discussion with the board professionals, was that we needed to really address this first, so make sure the record's clear that, these waivers are being granted, and then we proceed this evening with the full understanding of what's going to be presented.
Agreed.
Mr. Zardillo?
I agree with the summary. The only caveat, it's not really a big caveat, is that, yes, we did get a temporary waiver, but we always asked for the ultimate waiver. The temporary waiver was granted to deem the application complete for review, but we've always continued our request that we waive it until final. We have a lot of engineering issues and other things to deal with, and so we want to pursue those now at preliminary. We have a very comprehensive application on any number of issues, and I know I know that landscaping is important, but it is not the key element to this plan. And we certainly, what we show as A1 is let's call it a progress plan in terms of what the ultimate landscape plan will be.
Yes. The applicant was always asking for a complete or a waiver of this. It was the board that determined that it was going to be temporarily, and that's what was granted. So that's what's being requested now. The applicant's maintaining its request, but the board is now being asked to reconsider its prior approval or prior grant of the waiver, and being temporary, and make it a waiver request conditioned upon filing submission before filing a final. So it's up to the board's decision. If there was any questions.
So do we do that preliminarily, or do we do it?
Well, it will be, no, we do it now because we're amending what we approved back in March.
Okay.
So we'd be amending our prior grant of the waiver, being conditioned on being temporarily to be submitted before preliminary, is now that is going to be being a temporary waiver granted, that the submission has to now be before final rather than preliminary.
And we put that to vote now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. It's a little unusual.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay. All right, so if everybody heard Mr. Sordillo, we have to put this to a vote prior to the vote on the actual application and presentation. So if I could get a motion for this waiver,
Question,
yes.
why is landscaping so important in front of the entire plan?
I think it's to the waiver. It's granting an additional waiver to the temporary waiver. So
Yeah, essentially,
kind of semantics at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to speak over you. I just going to say, another way to view for this is actually, it's just essentially extending the waiver that was previously granted. We previously granted the waiver up to, if this document needed to be submitted, or this information and documentation needed to be submitted before preliminary was, the preliminary hearing. Now we're saying, we're extending that waiver to say
I
now it's
understand.
before final.
Thank you.
But we still, the information still would need to be submitted.
So,
Any
so,
folks have any more questions on it?
so what are you looking to move up so there are a bunch of variances that are looking, this is just for what, just the landscaping that we're looking, so we've already approved a preliminary, right, up to today.
Temporary.
They should have had it till today, and they don't have it now. So now they're asking for a full, until the.
No, they're still gonna have to provide it. So that will be provided, it will be reviewed by the board, its board's professionals, but it will be in connection with the final approval. And in supplementing it, they're offering to, stating that they will be providing some additional testimony. It just won't be the final landscaping plan. But it will have, we're not waiving it that it's not going to be required to be submitted to the board. We're just saying it doesn't have to be required to proceed this evening.
Okay. So the reasoning that you all don't have this is what, that there was other things of more importance that you couldn't get to it? Is that what I heard?
Sure, yeah. And we need to address those issues and the phasing issue before we're not running away from landscaping. We're just deferring it because we've been, I think the applicant has $20 million into this project. So we're not going to not do landscaping. It's just not something that is front and center now on this application. We want to tell you what we're doing. We want to talk about the phasing waiver or variance. And if we were to get preliminary approval, then we still have to work out issues with the county and the parkway on off tracks, and that's a lot more time consuming than we thought it was going to be. And quite frankly, where you put a tree or don't put a tree is, it's kind of the tail wagging the dog.
And Mr. Chairman, I can add that nothing, we're even granting this waiver, nothing will prohibit this board from discussing landscaping when the application's being presented tonight. Nothing will be even saying that we want certain landscaping installed as conditions of any preliminary approval. The only thing we won't have is that plan in front of us, which has been marked as A1, in a final form that's being presented by. And so the board can still look at this and throughout the application and throughout the presentation say, we see what you're doing there. We want more plantings in that area. Whether you were planning on doing it in your final plan or not, we want it there. And that's still something that can be discussed and be conditioned upon any approval. So it's not to say that we're not going to talk about landscaping. It's just that we won't have a signed, sealed, certified plan that meets all of our checklist requirements in front of us this evening.
So basically, again, it's a temporary waiver to get us through this evening and get us through preliminary, and final will be contingent upon the final landscaping plan.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
So it's just going to be, I'm sorry, so it's just going to be that we're just approving another waiver?
Yes.
Yeah, another temporary
That's all
waiver,
it is.
basically, yeah. And
There's no approval in the application. There's no,
Just
we're not
another
saying
waiver.
that their landscape plan is accepted.
Yeah, we're not approving anything.
We're just saying that their final certified version of this plan, it doesn't have to be submitted to the board until final approval is being sought. But like I said, we can still, as a board, discuss landscaping and talk about what the board wants to see and not see in connection with the application being presented.
Yeah, not only discuss it, we still reserve the right.
We can still vote on it.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make the motion, but I want to say that it seems like from your testimony so far, there's a lot of unanswered questions so far, which concerns me about the whole project.
Well, we have a lot of regulation in New Jersey, and we've spent years and millions of dollars to get to where we are now, and most all issues are resolved, except there is a design issue with the Parkway, I keep saying Parkway, Turnpike Authority in the county and the township on some aspects of the improvements. But 90% of that design is acceptable to everyone. We're down to the last 10%. So I hear what you're saying, and if I were sitting in your shoes, I understand what you're saying. But this project, and people could disagree, this project is 95% done in terms of approvals and design, et cetera. We don't have a final landscaping, and we don't have final design approvals from the county and the Turnpike Authority or this board. I mean, this board is, it is a county road, but still you have input. But we've, I can tell you, we've spent a lot of time and effort on this project and getting it to the point where it is, so that we can start. Our interest is in beginning development of this. And by the way, and you'll hear further from someone else, you know, I'm not the expert on this. This, just the residential has a positive fiscal impact. This residential, unlike single-family detached and residential that produces lots of school kids, this residential will be a positive fiscal impact for the town. There'll be surplus dollars coming from this beyond what you pay for services and to the school district, et cetera. I'm not the expert on that, so you can't, I'm not testifying, I'm telling you what I understand to be the case, and you'll hear more from someone smarter than me about it.
And to Casey's point, and I'm going to piggyback on what he said, and with all due respect, the majority of the applicants that come in here with these type of applications, they have to jump through the same hoops you do. You know, the
Oh,
regulations.
I don't think you have a job in town that has gone through that goes through the approval process that we've had to go through. We've had to go through an amended wastewater management plan to get sewer service for 2 buildings. We've gone through CAFRA, wetlands, flood hazard area. I don't know, the engineer will know better. We have, you know, $3 million of road improvements that we want to do, and we just got to get people to say, okay, you can do them. I mean, and by the way, those improvements, they, you know, they're mitigation improvements, obviously, for the impact of this development, and I shouldn't talk about things that the traffic consultant talks about, but this provides, I mean, this isn't a great situation today, and we're going to improve that situation for the people that use Lawrence Harbor, Manawan Road. I never know what to call it. I'm just going to call it Lawrence Harbor.
Lawrence Parkway.
So, what is it?
Lawrence Parkway. Right?
Okay, so another word.
Yeah.
Okay, so whatever, you know the road, and you know, you have a developer that has the financial ability to do these things, and the financial ability, the staying power to stay with this development. I've been here since 2003. Not every day, but I've been here when we've had, you know, 1 million square feet of office. We've had 700,000 square feet of office and a whole bunch of single-family and townhouses. We've had retail over by Bridgepoint, and the Bridgepoint people went nuts. And, you know, they didn't want retail right at their entrance to their community. So, I mean, I've been with this a long time, and we've, trust me, we're working this as hard as we can.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other input from the board regarding this waiver? Okay, so it's been so moved by Mr. Lenning. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
By Mr. Arena.
Mr. Lennick?
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
No.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Mr. Renner?
No.
Mr. Petty?
No.
Mr. McIsaac?
No.
Mr. Brennan?
No.
Chair Marucci?
No.
It's 3 yeses, 1, 2, 3, 7 noes.
So what are we going to do with the application tonight? I mean, again, I've been waiting since January for a public hearing. January, we submitted. June, we resubmitted. 120 or more days, and I get a review memo on October 13th, and I get a review memo on October 26th, and I get memos that have inaccurate information in them. And now you denied the waiver. So what are we doing with the rest of the application? Because if we don't, without that waiver, I don't know that we can proceed tonight.
I don't think we can. We needed the waiver to be able to proceed this evening because to be deemed complete, I agree with your assessment, to be deemed complete, we would have to have that information unless the
now,
board granted the waiver.
The board understands they're granting this, they're denying this for an inclusionary development application that's entitled by law to expedited review, special meetings, and to be dealt with promptly. Has not been, none of those things have occurred. You understand that? I want to make sure you all understand that. You all understand that? Okay. And you're voting this down? Okay.
So, well, the application cannot proceed based on the The board's not granting the waiver until those, the landscaping plan, those items have been submitted to the board. So if we can't proceed this evening, this application would have to be rescheduled to another date.
All right, so you're denying the application then tonight? That's what you're
Well,
doing?
the next conversation is the board has to act on this application. Well, no, because technically it's not deemed complete. We're not
No, it
denying
was
it.
deemed complete. It was deemed complete as a
It
matter
was
of law.
deemed complete based upon the grant of a
No.
temporary waiver.
No.
Yes.
No. It was deemed complete because you missed your 45-day review time period. It was automatically deemed complete. So you're denying this application tonight. Understand what you're doing. You're denying this application tonight.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think that,
Well,
and I'm
that's
trying to
a-
get my timetable because I know I looked at this before, that we might have, hold on,
Okay.
I apologize, just give me one moment.
No, I'm taking.
Because I want to, I know I had this,
So on June 16th, we submitted revised plans. You had 45 days within which to review the revised plans. You didn't do it. So I wrote a letter, I waited a while, and I wrote, and on September 8th, the planning board acknowledged that as of October, I'm sorry with the dates, as of August 2nd, the application was deemed complete. Read the municipal land use law.
right.
And you
But
didn't.
that was based on, and those revised plans and that was submission was based upon the board's grant of the temporary waiver that the landscape plan would have been submitted prior to the hearing on the preliminary application.
But if you want to, if that's the issue you want to go with.
Well, I don't want to do anything,
No,
but I'm saying that that's
well,
what's
you
presented
forced-
to us.
You forced our hand by denying the waiver. You have an inclusionary project, you have certain obligations, you haven't met those obligations. It's
Well,
nothing personal
no.
to the board members or to Vina or anyone else. You haven't met those obligations.
I would disagree. I would say you submitted an application, you requested waivers. Those waivers were granted temporarily based on the fact that this information was going to be submitted before this evening. Then there was additional, you submitted revised plans.
Which didn't have the landscaping.
Right.
And it was deemed complete because you had the opportunity in 45 days to say, hey, you didn't submit the landscape plan.
We did.
No, you
The board-
didn't.
The board did. The board did and said, we will let you not submit them now and let you be
That was
deemed technically
before
complete.
June 17.
Right. That is what we're basing it on.
No. June 17, the plans were submitted, right? When was
The revised plans were submitted based upon other items that need to be addressed.
When was the, I may have the date, Joe, if you just give me a minute.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at one of your letters that you submitted in August.
Right. Oh, you know what, I may not have, I know that we got a initial review memo from Planning, Engineering, and Traffic on, why am I not finding it? Oh, it's in a different letter.
Well, I'm
give me
going to
a
say while you're looking through that, I'm going to say what I have in front of me. I have a letter dated March 10th from our planning department
Right.
saying that the applicant's deemed incomplete, identifying a number of incomplete items, and then identifying the
what
5
was the date of
waivers
that?
being requested.
What was the date of that?
March 10th, 2022.
So on June 16th, we resubmitted.
Right.
And we did, wait a minute, we resubmitted, and we didn't submit a revised landscape plan.
Exactly.
So, wait a minute. So, that being the case, if you had a problem, you had 45 days to say, you didn't submit it, you're not complete.
No.
You didn't do
We
it.
don't have to reiterate, we don't have to re-vote on something that was already taken place. That's apples and oranges.
Okay.
We're dealing with these items that were deemed incomplete administratively or
Before we
technically,
submitted
and you
revised
resubmitted
plans.
revised plans on those. But that does not take away the fact that you also separately requested waivers. Those waivers were granted conditionally. So that condition still remains, whether you could submit 10 different
Waivers were
versions of
granted
those.
before June 17th.
Right. And those still remain enforceable
And then-
after June, and they remain
No.
enforceable to this
On
date
September
until this board
8th
votes
On
otherwise.
September 8th, when you say it shouldn't have been deemed complete, it was deemed complete.
It was deemed complete, and it's clearly in the board's, in the record, in the transcript, in the minutes, that it was deemed complete for administrative purposes, so it could be deemed complete, so you can move
You're
forward,
talking about
subject to
something
the
that
granting
happened
of those
3 months
waivers.
before that.
Right.
Yeah, I'm talking about a letter on this stationery that says you're deemed complete as of
Yes.
August 2.
And that was the point of the granting of the waivers. We granted those waivers temporarily so you could be deemed complete and we could move forward, subject to that condition. You didn't meet the condition.
If I didn't meet the condition, you should have raised that issue during the 45-day period.
We didn't have to. We already did it in connection with our review.
All right, well, we'll see what Judge McCluskey has to say.
Okay.
I mean, we haven't put $20 million in this deal to hear a simple request denied. A simple request denied. I mean, it boggles the mind. It boggles the mind. Do you want inclusionary housing on this site or not? Do you want to satisfy your fair share obligation or not? You have just said tonight, by a majority of this board, that you don't. That's what I'm going to take from this
You
meeting.
take what you want, but this board has approved all of the other applications before it for
Right.
affordable
And you've
housing.
and you've held
And
hearings.
all of them submitted landscape plans timely.
Right. And
That's
did
all
they
I'm
have
gonna
to
say.
go through the approvals that I had to go through? No. Did they have to spend the millions of dollars that we had to? No. Did
don't
you
have
hold
any
hearings?
evidence otherwise.
Did you hear?
I don't have
did
any
you hold
evidence saying that.
hearings 1 month after an application was deemed complete, where I've been waiting for 10 months? All right. So look, the board understands our position. I think this is a horrible action taken by the board, and we'll have to deal with it. So my position is, and you can say whatever you want, you've denied the application, so we know what to do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
No, because it was still administrative completeness technically. So, after that, we do general public comments. Just because it's a public hearing, and then after that. But it's not on the, it's not on the.
Sorry for talking. I know it's hard for you.
Give him a minute.
Wait, you have a tape too, though, right? No. Okay. Good night.
This application has been completed. We do have, just to open up to general public comments and for adjournment. No, the public comment's not going to be on this application. Public comment's going to be general public comments, as required by the Open Public Meetings Act.
Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, we have to open up to any general comments from the crowd, if anybody's out there wants to make any comments.
And, Mr. Chairman, if I can may add, as a planning board, even though it's general public comments, it's not about a specific application. Those will be in connection with the application and the public hearing on application. With regard to this particular application, the matter is closed for this evening. So we will not entertain testimony and public comments or questions regarding this application. It's just any general township matters or that would be considered before the planning board, within the planning board's jurisdiction, I should say.
We have somebody in the back?
You got it. Yes, you have to come up. You have to state your name and address, and then you can make your public comment.
I'm also here on behalf of my uncle, Joseph Randazzo. It's actually his address.
Sorry.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you. I'm actually here on behalf of my uncle, Joseph Randazzo. He lives at 1018 Marlborough Road. He was at a previous meeting, and he was happy to hear that he had a question about truck traffic going through Marlborough Road, and he was happy to hear that there will be absolutely no truck traffic on Marlborough Road, and he wanted to thank everyone for having that input. And aside from that, he did have a question that we hoped to ask, but he unfortunately forgot. He says that he heard that there was going to be continued building from on the Walmart property from Walmart between. It was going to be either his real estate agent actually told him, and it's on public records apparently. There's also going to be some site pads for restaurant and also office space, and he just wanted to know if there was any updates on that kind of stuff.
Chairman Marucci? I can. He was at the previous meeting, our redevelopment meeting. They were concerned about truck traffic on Marlborough Road. We assured them that there would not be any truck traffic on Marlborough Road. There are pad sites that have been approved for not approved, I should say, but pad sites that have been designated on those particular parcels for Walmart. So, to answer your question, yes, there are pad sites. Specifically, I think there's one in the front, and there might be one towards the back, if I'm not mistaken. I recently met with the property owner of the Walmart. So, but to circle back, they were just at the redevelopment agency. We assured them that there won't be any truck traffic. There might be some worker traffic that may go in, but mainly the back would be a fire access. Those are the two scenarios back there.
Okay. And then as far as the office space and the restaurant pads on for the property that has Walmart on it, the responsibility for that exact plans, where is it in progress, and what's that look like moving forward?
I'll have to defer to Vina if she has any of that information.
Before we proceed, I know you're here representing your uncle, but could you please state your name?
Giovanni Zavarino?
Giovanni Laverino. Okay, thank you.
For which one? Actually, no,
The
wrong
question was, is where are the actual pad sites that were set years ago with Walmart?
Yeah, so we,
And also the progress and where it's like
well,
what the plan is. As
we
well.
can't really give, as far as progress goes, we're not sure what their intention is, but the original approval for that shopping center included 2 restaurant sites up closer to 18, and then the office pad site was actually further back behind the Walmart towards Marlboro.
Okay.
And that's actually the plan is on file, so you can always put in a request to the planning office to look at the plans if you like. That's public information. But that site plan might also be. It was a long time ago. I mean,
it was.
It was 2010,
Yes.
I think. So it might be expired.
I
by
guess
now.
that's kind of why he was asking where it was.
It is called the Legend Center, and in fact, yours is perfect timing, I would say. I just received a request from Walmart wanting to meet with me for some sort of expansion. I haven't reviewed it, expansion of their store, but we were discussing internally about how these pad sites have not been developed, and there was no developers agreement in place. It was before my time, but we are trying to do our research because they were obligated through their approval to do XYZ. And we don't see any activity there, so the township will be following up on it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public with any comments on any issues? Okay, with that, I'll call for an adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will.
Mr. Petty, and a
Second.
second by Mr. De Palma.
Mr. Lennick?
Yes.
Mr. Mamakis?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Mr. Renner?
Yes.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. McIsaac?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Chairman Marucci?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.